Good morning from Taipei. This is Christianity and Liberty, and I'm your host, Andy McCafferty. Today, we are going to discuss another important question, namely, should we mandate the COVID vaccine for 5 to 11-year-old children? I'm going to argue that the answer is no. At the same time, I want us to see what the basic issue is in answering this question. This is my second video in the series. In the first video, I discussed the question, how many healthy 5 to 11-year-olds have died from COVID-19? The CDC does not clearly answer this question, but I argued that the answer is somewhere around 12. Now, since then, I heard Dr. McElroy on the Ben Shapiro show say that among healthy kids 0 to 17, perhaps 10 to 20 have died. Since 5 to 11-year-olds make up about 1/3 of these kids, by his estimate, there'd be 3 to 7 5 to 11-year-old healthy 5 to 7-year-olds have died. So my answer was pretty close, 12. That fact is important today. There are over 20 million healthy 5 to 11-year-old kids in the United States. In the last 2 years, 5 of them have died. Let's say 5 would mean about 2 or 3 children a year. Another way to say that, it's about 1 in 8 to 10 million who will die each year. With this as background, let's get started with today's question. The state of the question. Our question, should we mandate the vaccine for healthy kids or for all 5 to 11-year-olds? The things to note about this question, it's about a mandate. It's about all kids, 5 to 11, which is grade school kids. We should also note that the question has the word should. Should we mandate the vaccine? And the word should is an evaluative word, a normative word. It's an ethical word. It is not about what is the case or what will be the case. It is about what ought to be the case. And anytime you have a should question, it's harder to answer. It's worth noting that a should question is not expertise of a doctor. A should question involves philosophy, religion, and politics. Okay, because it has the word should, it's harder to answer, but we're going to consider what the issues are. Let me first give you an overview of my answer. We want to discuss the question in detail, but first, an overview. I want to make 2 points. First, the only plausible reason to vaccinate all grade school children is to protect adults. This is my main point, and we're going to discuss it at length. It is really the key point. Why do some people want to vaccinate all our kids? Is it to protect the kids themselves? I'll argue that's not a plausible reason for vaccinating them all, because they're in very little danger. The only plausible reason, if it is plausible, is to protect the society as a whole, or in other words, the adults. Second, if this is so, then we should not mandate the vaccine for kids. At least from a Christian point of view, it is questionable whether anyone should vaccinate a healthy child for COVID, because we should never use our children as a means to an end. And if we vaccinate them in order to help adults, we are using the child as a means to an end. Now, in a free society, some people might decide they want to vaccinate their kids because they want to help the whole society as a whole. And if the risk for the child is very, very, very low, well, that's plausible. But to mandate that all parents vaccinate their children so as to protect unvaccinated adults, it's a little outrageous. In a free society, parents who don't want to do this must be free not to do it. That's an overview of the answer. Now we turn to the main point, i.e., that the only plausible reason for vaccinating kids is to protect adults. It's not a concern for the kids themselves because the kids aren't in any danger. Okay. Another way to ask this. Suppose we're not worried about adults. Suppose your only concern is with the children in our society. Would we vaccinate all of them? To answer this question, let's suppose that you have a healthy 6-year-old daughter and you're deciding whether to have her vaccinated or not. Sure, it's a hard question. There's no solution. There's only trade-offs. There's some danger in vaccinating. There's some danger in not vaccinating. So what you'll do is ask for a comparison. What is the probability of this child dying from COVID or having long-term health issues if I don't get the child vaccinated? And then you'll be asking, what is the risk to the child of taking the vaccine? Thankfully, the answer is both the danger and the risks of vaccinating and not vaccinating are very low. The risk of death is, for all practical purposes, 0. As I just said, 1 in 10 million children will die, healthy children will die from COVID-19 this year. The risk of hospitalization is slightly higher, and the risk of long-term effects is unknown, but also not very high. At the same time, the risk of taking the vaccine is low, but this risk level is also partially unknown. So what does a parent do? What would you do if this was your child? Different parents will think differently, but many will follow this simple rule. Don't give your children any medicine unless there is a very clear reason to do so. Don't give your children a vaccine when there is a reasonable doubt that the vaccine might be more dangerous than the disease, and so they will choose not to vaccinate. Or they might say, let's wait until we get more information, both about the danger of the disease and the danger of the vaccine. And indeed, this is what many countries and many doctors are telling their patients. Except for the CDC, it seems most people are holding this idea with respect to children. So, if every parent's main concern is to protect their own children, and they know the facts, many, or perhaps most, will not vaccinate. It follows that protecting these kids is not the main reason that people are pushing the vaccine. I can't believe that the CDC is judging just looking at the kids, for the health of the kids, or Dr. Fauci and saying we have to vaccinate them in order to protect them. It's just not a persuasive reason to take the vaccine, little less to mandate it for everyone. If they have a persuasive reason, it has to do with the society as a whole. Again, because this is an important point, we continue to stress it. In the 2 years, 2020, 2021, perhaps 3 to 7 healthy 5 to year old children have died from COVID-19. A few other children have developed long-term illnesses. But the U.S. is a big country. There are about 28 million 5 to 11-year-olds. I estimate 20 million of them are healthy. If our main concern is to protect these 20 million kids, when only about 5 of them have died in 2 years, we're not going to vaccinate them all because we might do more harm than good. As Thomas Sowell says, there are no solutions, there's only trade-offs, and it's a bad trade to think, I'm going to vaccinate 20 million kids in order to prevent the death of 5 of them. Because vaccinating 20 million kids has its own negative consequences. Given this in a free society, we can allow some parents to vaccinate their kids if they want, but if they are only concerned, we're just thinking about these kids, it'd be madness to mandate a vaccine for them. Again, when we read articles about proposing that we vaccinate kids, they often start out with a claim. Although it is not as dangerous for kids as adults, it is still dangerous, COVID-19. And so we ought to vaccinate them. But they never stop there. Never. I've read a lot, and they never stop there. They quickly move on to, and the kids might spread the disease to others. And then 100 other reasons. We can put a quicker end to the pandemic. We can protect the entire society. We can prevent new variants. None of them ever say, this vaccine will protect our kids, so let's vaccinate them. Stop. With the polio vaccine, we say, this vaccine will save thousands of our kids every year, so let's vaccinate them. Stop. And it's persuasive. But you never see anyone say that about COVID-19. In order to make the point again, let's look at what I take to be an authoritative argument for vaccinating the kids. It comes from johnhopkins.org. It's by 2 Johns Hopkins doctors. The article is called, What Parents Need to Know. You can find it on the site. In the article, these 2 doctors give 5 reasons for vaccinating children. They begin, point 1, and I quote, the point is called The Vaccine Helps Prevent Kids from Getting COVID-19, and they write, although COVID-19 in children is sometimes milder than in adults, some kids infected with the coronavirus can get severe lung diseases, become very sick, and require hospitalization. This is especially important to remember in light of the Delta variant, which is more contagious than other coronavirus variants. The current vaccines are still effective in preventing severe illness from the Delta virus variant of the virus. Children can also have complications, such as multi-system inflammatory syndrome, that may require intensive care or long-lasting symptoms that affect their health and well-being. The virus can cause death in children, although this is rarer than for adults. Now, this paragraph mixes together 4 arguments: hospitalizations, the Delta variant, multi-system inflammatory syndrome, and death. And this is a strategy that kind of overwhelms the reader, but they don't give any statistics. More importantly, what they say about death and the danger is completely deceptive. 700,000 people have died from COVID, about 500 kids, 0 to 17. That is 1 out of 1,400. And for healthy 5 to 11-year-olds, it is 1 out of 140,000. 1 out of 140,000 deaths have been for healthy 5 to 11-year-olds. It's deceptive to say COVID-19 in children is sometimes milder than in adults. And then to end the paragraph, children dying is rarer than for adults. Anyone reading that would be shocked to discover that it's thousands of times rarer. Why did they do this? Because if they begin the paragraph, of 700,000 deaths, only about 5 were healthy 5 to 11-year-old kids. Parents with a healthy 5 to 11-year-old kids will immediately say, I'm not getting this vaccine for the kids. These 2 authors, point 1, persuades by overwhelming and deception. but it gives no plausible reason to vaccinate 20 million healthy 5 to 11-year-old kids. The two experts then go on to 4 other reasons for vaccinating kids. And these 4 points are not related to the health of the kids. They're benefits for adults or for the society as a whole. The vaccine helps prevent or reduce the spread of COVID-19. Getting vaccinated for COVID-19 can help stop other variants from emerging. Having your child vaccinated for COVID can help restore a more normal life. COVID-19 vaccines help protect the community. If there's a reason for vaccinating children, it is these 4. It is for the sake of the society other than the children. It is for the sake of the adults. It's not for the kids themselves. And that's the first point. If there's any reason for vaccinating the kids, it's not in order to help or protect the kids because the kids aren't in danger. Now, I'll say this a 4th way. We sometimes hear that we mandate other vaccines, such as the polio vaccine. This is supposed to be some kind of argument. You'll hear Dr. Fauci on down mention this kind of thing. The idea is if we mandate the polio vaccine, we can mandate a COVID vaccine. But what this actually shows is that these people who argue this way are not serious about protecting kids. Because with respect to kids, polio and COVID-19 are like night and day. Polio attacked kids. They were the main victims of polio. In the 1950s, before the vaccine, polio paralyzed 15,000 American children a year. Parents were in complete panic, and they were right to be in complete panic. The difference between polio and COVID-19 with respect to kids is literally night and day. The polio vaccine is proper because the kids were in great danger. But it's ludicrous to argue, therefore, we should or could vaccinate kids for COVID-19. In fact, it proves the point. Anybody that's serious about kids, when they hear the polio and COVID-19, they'll ask, why are you putting these two into one sentence? Those that do put it into one sentence are not thinking about the health of kids. They're thinking about the society as a whole. Now, I turn to the second point. Given that kids are not in danger from COVID-19, and the only plausible reason for vaccinating them is to protect adults or the society, we should not mandate the vaccine. Maybe some parents might vaccinate their kids in order to protect the society. They might want to do that. In a free society, we can give parents the freedom to decide. But should we force all parents to do this? I give 5 reasons why I think this is out of bounds. It's madness. It's totally outrageous. First, it is obvious. I'll give 4 other reasons. But these don't take away the fact that it's obvious that in a free society, parents cannot be compelled to vaccinate their children when their children aren't in danger, only to protect other adults who chose not to get the vaccine. Second, we have never done anything like this in history. All the vaccines we mandate for kids are in order to protect the children themselves. We've never mandated a vaccine which is intended to protect adults or to return the society to some sort of normality. Think about this. Really, so many new things are happening in the U.S. so quickly. Third, it is wrong to use kids as a means to an end. It's just wrong to use kids as a means to an end. Some philosophers might think of an exception to this, maybe in some strange situation that can be done, but COVID-19 vaccine mandate is not such an exception. And finally, the fourth, even those who argue for vaccinating children are fully aware that giving the kids the vaccine primarily to protect others is ethically very dubious. We can see this because they always begin their arguments by claiming that they are doing it for the children, and then afterwards they give other reasons. I noticed this already in the argument from the two Johns Hopkins experts. They begin, the vaccine prevents kids from getting COVID-19. As I said, they write, although COVID-19 in children is sometimes milder than in adults, and then they end the paragraph, the virus can cause death in children, although this is rarer than for adults. As I discussed above, this is deceptive, and we want to ask why? Why would they do this? Above, I said it's because if they didn't, the article would not be persuasive, and their purpose is to persuade parents. But here I want to note that they do it because they implicitly know that you can't start an article out about vaccinating kids by saying, hey, let's vaccinate these kids to protect the adults. People are going to look at you. They know that they have to start to claim that the vaccine is to protect the kids, and to do this, they exaggerate or they hide the facts about the kids. That's the point. Even those who want to vaccinate kids know that they must claim that their main reason for wanting to vaccinate kids is to protect the kids, and so they begin with the claim that this is in fact their main concern. Summary, the question we discussed, should the United States mandate the COVID vaccine for 5 to 11-year-old children? The main factual point is that healthy kids are not in danger from COVID-19, and so if our children are our main concern, there's no strong reason to give them a vaccine, and certainly in a free society, we should not force all parents to vaccinate their kids. The only plausible reason Dr. Fauci and the CDC have for wanting to vaccinate kids is to protect adults, speed the end of the epidemic, help the society as a whole. It is not for the sake of the children themselves. They will never say, let's vaccinate for the sake of these kids, period. I gave 4 reasons why, in light of this, it would be ethically wrong to mandate the vaccine for 5 to 11-year-olds. The first, it's obviously wrong. The second, we've never done anything like this before. The third, we should not use kids as a means to an end, and we should certainly not force parents to use their kids as a means to our ends. Fourth, even the proponents of the vaccine for kids know this, and so they exaggerate the danger that COVID-19 has for kids. That's it. We hope you enjoyed this show. Thank you for listening. If you want to leave a comment, you can do so on my YouTube channel. Our plan is to do 1 show every week, so check back next week.